Welcome to Axanar Podcast number 73. I'm Alec Peters, and tonight I have my editor, post-production supervisor, sound designer, man of many talents, Mark Edward Lewis with me. Mark, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Well, we are first of all, we are Sans Keith Cedar, our usual host, who has had to take care of some family matters tonight. So we are just gonna blab away ourselves and tell you all about the amazing final shoot of Axanar that happened last weekend here in Atlanta at Aries Studios. And so it was basically a one-day shoot. The second day we did a whole bunch of BTS documentary style footage for either a documentary or BTS, which is behind the scenes for the Axanar Blu-ray that is going to be coming out along with the final two episodes of Axanar. So, and well, let me ask you, Mark, how does it feel to be done with principal photography?
Well, it's really good, having watched many such photography sessions over the years, directed by various folks. And then, of course, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, directed by Ted and I. Was it 4? We've done 4. 2,
4. Yep.
4.
4.
Yeah. So it's been really great because we've kind of created a synergy, not just Ted and I, but also many recurring members of the crew who really grasp powerfully what our vibe is, which is we're here to have a great time. We're here to get a lot of great stuff on camera and, make the best Star Trek that we can make. It's so great to walk into the studio and see people that you've been working with now for 3 years. When we started these, Ted and I started in 21. So it's been, this last shoot was such a great experience for me because we can't actually talk about who's in this, but one of the actors that we worked with is one of my favorite actors from a very prominent sci-fi series. And I'd never dreamed I'd be able to work with this person, but it was such a delight. And then also to get a little tipsy with them over dinner afterward, even more fun, and hear some of these incredible stories that they had that you'll all hear on the Blu-ray from the BTS stuff that they talked about. It was such a great experience. And then for me also, because I live in Tennessee, so I don't fly out, I drive my truck out. It was sad for me this time because this is the last shoot, at least for Axanar in the foreseeable future for me, that I'm going to be not just at that studio, but on that bridge. If you've ever had the opportunity to step on any fan film bridge, whether it's up in Ticonderoga, New York, or anywhere else, it defies emotional description. The first time I walked onto the set in 2014 in Ticonderoga, New York for New Voyages when I directed Mind Sifter. I walked in and I just started crying. It was annoying. I was just like, I can't believe it. Because in those days you'd walk in and the bridge is right there. They hadn't filled in the screen. It was just open. And so you just walk in, you're like, oh my gosh. And the Aries Bridge, which now is many other ships as well in Axanar, the Aries Bridge, it's no different. And unlike that bridge in Ticonderoga, New York, if any of you ever come to see it, there's only one way in, and it's this really narrow little door. So you're looking at all this weird gobbledygook outside and this big kind of sphere thing that goes around in the studio. There's monitors and Raspberry Pis everywhere, and Dana doing his crazy wizardry all over. And then you walk around, you're like, what is this stupid thing? And then you walk around, there's this door, and you take up these 3 little steps, and it's like, boom! Within 6 feet, you're like transported into the 22nd century, going, wow, this is incredible. So I was sad to drive away on our second day after I'd done my interviews, going, that's sad. It's been a long time. I've been on that bridge in 2 different parts of the continent. In various forms of repair. So I have an emotional attachment. To be fair, I have a real emotional attachment to the one in Ticonderoga, New York, too. I've been on that bridge 2 years and directed 2 productions there. And it's just...
So you never directed at the old Star Trek New Voyages building.
No,
which
over in, what is it called? The city.
Yeah, gosh.
Yeah, it was cramped in there, right? No, I only directed.
Gosh.
Yeah, the first year I directed in Mindsifter was their first year at the supermarket.
Yep.
Where they had all this space. They're like, oh, look how spacious it is. I'm like, it's actually kind of cramped to me. I don't know. But they're like, oh, no, you don't understand. It was so cramped. We couldn't even. Like, wow. Great.
Yeah. No, the old one was it Port Jervis?
Oh, shoot. Now I almost had it. Keep going. It'll come to me.
Yeah, I know. It'll come to us eventually.
Port Henry.
What's that?
Port Henry.
Port Henry. Yeah, that old building, which was like a 1920s Buick dealership, it had to be condemned. I mean, there was mold problems. People were getting sick all the time. And so that was, and that's where they filmed Of Gods and Men of all, I mean, you think of Walter and Nichelle, who were not spring chickens back then, working in that 90-degree heat because it was just abominable. It was
I did the post on, it's very confusing now which holiest thing we're talking about, but the re-release, the first re-release, I redid all the posts on it before Darren went back and read it again. But I was not there, but I saw all the outtakes of everybody sweating and everybody throwing up because everybody got sick and there was nowhere to go in those days. You're in this place.
It was just hard. So we live in the lap of luxury.
We do.
Area studios, air conditioning and heating and.
Yeah, although this last shoot, it took place in February and it was quite cold in that place because if we run, what we discovered when we shot in September, what I'm discovering now in post is the incredible noise of the very effective air conditioner. So for Icarus, I have spent no small amount of time stripping out all manner of heating noises and all this.
Oh, man.
When you get to the dialogue in Axanar when I'm doing that cleanup process, it's going to be fun. So, but I will say this, somebody asked me, they're like, the haters just love to hate. And they're like, well, why do you like Alec? Why do you stick around with him? He's such a, whatever the expletive is. And I'm like, well, first of all, he's my friend and I'm loyal to friends. And secondly, this doesn't really matter, but it's important to note that some of the biggest opportunities I've had to direct have come from Alec. Like, you were the one that said, so they're trying to come up with this director at New Voyages for this thing called Mindsifter. 3 directors have passed. You're kind of 4th string. What do you think? I'm like, oh, that sounds great. And that turned into a whole thing. And then Avengers Station, they got some guys. They don't really know what they're doing. They need some help with audio. And then I was post-super for that. So it's like, okay, so you've given me a lot of really incredible entries that began with doing post-production for K'Tumba.
Right.
What else did we do? We did K'Tumba. We did Holiest Thing after Mindsifter. And then, of course, I said to Richard when we were casting Torment of Destiny, I'm like, dude, we've never worked together. Because I didn't see him on Axanar. I walked on one day there in LA and I saw him. I shook his hand and I'm like, hey, cool. And that was it. Because he and I never talked Hollywood, ever. We never did. It was always women and money and life, and that was it. And so finally one day I said, I talked to James Cullen, I'm like, I think I could get Richard Hatch to play the bad guy. And he's like, go do it. And so, he was like, well, that sounds great. So one of these days, well, I can't say officially that it'll ever get done, but unofficially, one of these days I'm looking forward to seeing it all complete the way I want it to be. But it'll be after Axanar's out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, basically, K'Tumba was the first time we ever worked together.
That's correct. And that was not long. That was 6 months after we met. Because that was 2013, early 2014.
It was. Yes, it was. Yeah, I remember going up there and.
You know what? That's actually not true. That's not true. The first time we worked together was the trailer for Prelude to Axanar. where we shot it at your place.
That was 2014.
That was after. I don't really.
Yes, it was after Katoomba. It was.
Oh, okay. Well, then you're right. It's the first.
Katoomba. Yeah. Because that absolutely.
And we had that massive puzzle jigsaw of one edit from Who Knows Who, and then Vic's edit, and then all this other stuff, Katoomba, and we had to piece it all together. Like, what do we do? Oh
my God! I mean, they had, and James famously has given up on 3 different episodes, and they were ready to give up on Katoomba because they really didn't have anyone who knew what they were doing as editing wise.
Yeah.
And I said, and I knew you and had met you through Richard, and you were, you had told me you knew how to edit and blah, blah,
blah.
That's
how I met Richard, was as an editor. So, and we never worked together. He's like, oh, yeah, Louis can edit. I'm like, how do you know?
So I literally went up there. There was a trip that I went up to New Voyages, and James Cawley gave me the drive. He's like, here it is.
Now, my understanding was Vic had made off with the footage and wasn't going to give it back, and you got it from Vic. That's my understanding.
Well, yeah. So what happened was Vic and James had their legendary blowout
over the $500 captain's chair. Yes.
Whatever. Yeah, it was something stupid, and I was like, Vic needs to give you the footage. It's just, whatever you forget the personalities. The footage doesn't belong to Vic. It belongs to you, James. Get it. And no one wanted to press it. No one wanted to do it. And I said, well, fuck this. Excuse me. We're going to have to bleep that out. And I said, screw this. And I literally got online, and I'm pretty sure it was on trekmovie.com in the comments section of an article. And I said, Vic has this footage. He refuses to return it. That's bullshit. And and I never forget that, Greg Schnitzer who was one of the EPs at New Voyages, kind of threw a fit that I was like, he was trying to be, we're just going to be nice and play nice. And I'm like, yeah, well, that hasn't worked for you. So let's call him out and so I called Vic out, and Vic returned the footage because he didn't want to look like it was now public knowledge that he had the footage and he was holding it up. He didn't want to look like an idiot. So he returned the footage. But then James has no one to edit it. And I said, fine, I'll get Mark Edward Lewis. And I said to you, and you said, yeah. And I went up to New Voyages, and we went I remember going out to the breakfast place, and afterwards he hands me the drive, and I brought it home to LA, and you went to work, and that's how I got my producing credit on Katoomba.
Yeah, well, we worked at, those were, for those of you who are editors, those were back in the Final Cut 7 days.
Oh yeah, that's Final Cut. Yeah,
Final Cut 7, and we were like, this is so great, because in those days we thought it was the greatest thing because it worked, and and then after that, you and I had the conversation where I said, you need to know how to edit. You do. And so then we shot that promo for Prelude, and you came over to my place in Culver City, I don't know how many times.
3 days.
I didn't touch the keyboard at all. I said, Alec, here's how this works. And you'd seen me do it before. So, and y'all need to know, he cut that trailer. Now, I mean, I stood over his shoulder, but I never touched, I think I touched the final export because I had to fix a color thing. And then you cut that. So if anybody gets an editor credit for that, that's Alec Peters gets the Prelude to Axanar trailer credit.
Yeah, the Ask video of our Kickstarter, which is really good.
I watched it the other day. I showed it to somebody, and I was there. I'm like, hey, man, this is good.
It was really good. It was really, really good. It was like, yeah, that's what we raised $100,000.
$100,000 good.
Yeah.
And, and I was talking to my son, who's going to be helping me do the exterior visual effects spaceship stuff for the 2 episodes, because there's, how many shots do we have in that department? 70, 80?
Yeah.
Something like that. That doesn't count the visual effects shots we have of everybody compositing, which is probably 150, maybe 200. But that doesn't require all the sound design. That's the sound design with the D7s and the D6s and the Aries and all that. I mean, that's just massive. So I was telling my son about the protocol, how we're going to do it. And I said, but it's not at all like we had in Prelude. In Prelude, Tobias did those original shots long before there was any trouble with anybody. And I had these incredible, beautiful, no space lake shots from Tobias that were so inspiring. Now, I'd already been inspired because I'd worked with him on Mind Sifter. Or no, I hadn't. I'd worked with him. No, I'd only seen the stuff from Katumba. I never actually talked to him. And even those shots, back when they were in 720p, I was like, wow, these are just unbelievable. And every frame I had to cut of his shots and put on the editing room floor proverbially. I'm like, oh no, it's too long. So I got so inspired by those shots. And I'm like, I want to do not just whoosh sound effects. I want to do if it was Ben Burtt from Star Wars, if we hired Ben Burtt to do it, what would we do? Now, as fate would have it, Frank Serafini came on board the project later anyway. And, who's sound effects for Star Trek The Motion Picture, Hunt for Red October, Tron. That's when I saw his name for the first time when I was a kid. And, this Frank sound effects, I'm like, I want to meet that guy someday. And eventually I did. We worked together. So, but we had all that sound design done for those shots before we ever cut it in. And that never, ever happens. We had little vignettes of these little Tobias shots, all sound effected up. We had a whole sound library made. And that's where, everybody asks, what's the sound of the Ares? I'm like, it's a bunch of things. It's a jet copter. It's a shuttle from Next Generation. It's a truck going up the 5 freeway, going through gears. It's a bunch of other stuff. It's 8 different elements depending on what it's doing, not counting the weapon systems, which the torpedoes are 3 different elements. It's a quantum torpedo, the original TOS torpedo, a World War II U-boat torpedo sound, and the Next Generation, right before the phasers. That's phasers. So those 3 elements, and then phasers for the Ares are, and this is from Frank, where he added shotgun sounds in Prelude right to the beginning of the phasers, which give them this real pop sound. And we're using howitzers now, the original phaser sound, and then the TNG. If you all can remember, the collimator ring on the 1701D right before it fires, it doesn't just go bing. There's a whoosh, there's a sound. So we add that in right before it fires phasers. So you get this beautiful blend of a little TNG feel, but it's definitely TOS rooted, and it just layers and layers and layers. And that all came because of that trailer. We had these shots before, and I'm like, these have to be just as beautiful sounding orchestration as Tobias did in them visually. And it's inspired so much.
And Tobias had done a bunch, the first shot of the Ares, which Tobias used, which we use in Prelude, Tobias delivered in 2013.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had used it. I mean, one of the reasons we did so well as a Kickstarter was that I had been working. We had a Facebook group in 2013, maybe 2012, and I'd been releasing concept art and images that Tobias had given me, the Ares, and then video. And so he had, for example, the one where that you see the Ares going, it's going like this over a planet. It's a top-down shot over a red planet. Beautiful. That was a stock, meaning he had done it previously. The one where it comes out of the clouds, he had done previously. So, those shots, we're using everything.
And you guys don't realize that shot with the clouds. You think, oh, it's a shot with the clouds. If you don't know about visual effects, especially in 2012, 2013, which is really the dawn of what we do now, it was clunky. If you go back to Babylon 5 in the 90s, you're like, oh, boy, that doesn't really stand up. And the only reason DS9 and TNG stand up because they were using physical things.
Yeah.
2005 to 2012 was kind of a dead zone of we're not exactly sure how to do computer generated stuff. But Tobias has this incredible, we call it volumetrics, where he's got millions and millions of particles that he the softwares create clouds. You think, oh, clouds, how hard can that be? The hardest.
Yeah.
Next to hair floating around, which fortunately he didn't have to do for ships in those days. Or no one has to do for ships. But it's like clouds, and then having this hard metal thing interact with the clouds and then mathematically billow out in the right way. Just think about what that would mean to a computer. No AI, there's no machine learning. It's just you have to animate that and mathematically go, this is what a human body would think is real.
Yeah.
That's like, how? And I remember I first saw that shot and I'm like, I don't know what he's doing, but it's magic. Yeah. And I remember every shot that would come to me from him in those days, it was like Christmas morning. I'm like, look at this. This is amazing.
Well, yeah, because it kept getting better.
Yeah, every shot, you're like, whoa.
Once we start seeing the other Starfleet ships, yeah, there's just some gold. As a matter of fact, you have some wonderful sound design when the Geronimo class.
I was just going to say that Geronimo class where it's coming through and then it turns around.
Oh, yeah, it's just.
I was like, how am I even going to, rise to that? And then in that particular shot, what I ended up doing, and I have videos on this that I did in those days because I was teaching people about sound, how I did it. And it's like every piece, okay, there's the front hull, then there's the bridge, and then there's the bizarre ground scoops, and there's the nacelles. Every one of those had like an instrument and an orchestra coming by. So if you watch that video before we put Bornstein's music in, which we also had Bornstein's music for that trailer too, which is, you can't, that's a major part of how that thing feels. It was like you watch and you're like one set, another set of sound, another set of sound, another set of sound, another thing, and then it just goes away. And it was like, I don't remember how many tracks that thing was, 30 plus tracks just for the Geronimo to come through the shot.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah. So let's get back to the shoot. It's just for everyone who's listening. If you haven't watched our live stream, we have, there's 2 live streams you can watch on our YouTube channel. One is the full 2-hour live stream, which includes like 15 minutes of JP and Jefferson not being able to get sound on the live stream. But Jefferson then edited it down to just basically when you and I join in once we got back from dinner. And so there's an hour worth of post-shoot live stream, which is really worth your while to watch because it was like we had just finished and Mark and I are all excited about it all. So I urge you to watch that on our YouTube channel, Axanar YouTube channel. So, but yeah, I mean, if I look at this shoot, which was again 2 actors, which I'll tell the characters were Sonia Alexander and the other character was Moreau the Klingon, which people know we shot previously, and this is one of the it was. Not having shot Sonia, we had to take a day and shoot Sonia. Mm-hmm. That gave us leave to reshoot Moreau with a different actor. And the actor who played Moreau back in October, who looked amazing. As a matter of fact, amazing. As a matter of fact, I for those who are watching this on the YouTube channel, I'll even pull up. I just happen to have gotten a shot of him downloaded, and I'll pull one up so you can all see it. There you go. I looked amazing. Yeah, this is Kevin Porter. Kevin who plays Batman in the Bat in the Sun videos, if you know those fan films. He looks amazing. He looked great.
And by the way, if you've ever stood next to him, I'm 6'2". He's at least 4 inches taller than me, maybe 5.
He's a big, yeah. I want to say he's 6'5", but he's also in the Klingon boots, which are like that.
Yeah, that's true. I was just like, I met Shaq at Michael's studio one day.
Wow.
And, he was just fooling around, and he comes in, and I'm at the studio mixing, and I'm sitting down. I'm a pretty tall guy, so I'm used to people heads coming below my eye view when I stand up. I stand up and I'm like, I remember this feeling of something's wrong. I'm not up high enough because I'm looking at a belt buckle right here. I'm just like, I come up and the belt buckle comes to about right here. And I'm like, oh my God. But that's what it was like with Kevin. I'm like, wow, you're
a big guy in Klingon boots too. Yeah. So Kevin looked amazing. The costume we put together was the actual kind of vest-like tunic from the JJ movies, from Star Trek Into Darkness, with a Worf-style baldric with all sorts of medals all over it. Yeah, and he's got gray hair and beard and all. And Kevin's a very good actor. But the role is for a much older person. And we thought we could gray him up and make him look old, but that was a mistake on my part. It just didn't work. Well, although he's a great Klingon.
Yeah, he's a great killer Klingon. And Kevin, he doesn't sound old. He has this incredible instrument in his chest. It's just, you just can't mute it. It's so just full of life and energy and passion. Vibrant, that's the word. And passion. And you're like, okay, well, this isn't an old Klingon, but very, very good.
Yeah. So we recast the role of Moreau. So understand this, that basically Moreau, who in the full script of Axanar plays, he's Karn's mentor. He's the Karn before Karn, right? And so he's there in the full feature film script playing a really important role. But with the passing of Richard, we basically inserted him into the next 2 episodes to carry a lot of the Klingon dialogue. So we got another actor who you will be blown away by.
You won't believe it.
He's amazing. As a matter of fact, Crystal and I were watching the assembly you put together the other night, and as soon as he comes on, his first line out of his mouth, Crystal and I just started laughing. And not because it was funny, because we were like, that was unbelievable. Like, we were laughing at it, out of just shock on how good he was. Yeah. And we know that people are going to be blown away. It's going to sell that character. It's going to sell Axanar. It's going to sell everything.
There was more than one time while I was cutting his lines into the assembly where the 2 words "holy shit" came out of my face in the best possible way. At the end of a delivery, I'm like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, it's just
so good.
He makes it look so easy, and you should know that when he was shooting his lines, like, he would do 5 takes, 6 takes, and every one was printable. Everyone could have been. If Mark, his editor, it was all tone. Which one did you want?
Yeah. The first one was fine. Perfect. Could have been used.
Usually his second one was his best. At least from the first 5 lines he did, I kept noticing, wow, he's nailing it on the second one. But anyway, they were all great. So anyway, you will all get that. So what we have is so what we didn't do is we didn't jettison all of Kevin's lines, because one, he looks amazing. And it is production value. It is like this great looking Klingon. So we use some of those lines. So basically, a couple of Moreau's lines go to Kevin as a different Klingon, which we haven't even named yet. You'll find out. So it works great. Listen, I will tell you that Claude over in Italy, who's our costume consultant, saw the assembly, and he just could not stop raving about it. He just thinks it's going to be better than Prelude. He is like, the story was amazing. He just thought everyone nailed it. The story was amazing. The emotional beats are great. So he was really, really happy. I will also say that we have so many actors this time outside of the stars. So say there's five or 6 stars in this. Everyone else, we have all these people who are not big time actors who work in Atlanta, who are Star Trek fans, right? And they're amazing. The depth of this cast is unlike any other fan film, because top to bottom, there's no, outside of me, there's no real, there's no bad actors there.
You're great. No one's gonna. I mean, the haters are going to say what the haters are going to say. Haters are going to hate, and haters are going to hate. So, right. They're going to go, oh, Alec, no, you're deep in that pool. Fine. Well, now, you've been saying 19 characters, but since we've added Moreau and Kevin. Doesn't that put us at 20?
I'm almost positive we had 18. And when we added Kevin, when we kept Kevin as a separate character, that made 19.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. I'll have to go back and check. But yeah, but that's crazy because we had 6 in Prelude.
I remember you said 6, and I'm like, no, with that's 21 minutes. How can 6 characters? And then I'm like, oh yeah, well, who else would it be if it wasn't those 6?
Yeah. So I think we have. So I think people will. I think people are going to love it, and don't feel bad. There is Richard Hatch in the next 2 episodes.
You're going to say that?
I don't mind saying that. Yeah, I've said it before. People, and listen, it's only our really faithful fans who are following these podcasts, so they get a little treat. There is a little bit of Richard in there, but it works. Everything works together. Oh, yeah. And so we're real happy, and we've just started working on the VFX. I can tell you that we've got a couple good quality people working on VFX. I can't tell you who they are. Basically, we try and keep everyone, we keep everyone incognito, if you will, just so people don't get harassed, because people are constantly being harassed by the haters, which is a shame. But so we try and keep everyone. And listen, CBS is also discouraging people from working on Axanar. I've been getting calls about that. So, it's just better if we let us do our stuff, and, 6 months from now, we'll be releasing it and you'll all be happy. And it will be, it'll be like, well, first of all, it'll be 10 years since Prelude came out. And I was talking, who was it? I was talking with someone today and just saying that there's a big story. The story, it's a 10-year journey that's going to end this summer. And when it comes out, when this story comes out, when Axanar comes out, there's a lot. I mean, Star Trek fans are going to be happy, and it's going to shut up a lot of people. CBS will probably be pissed off. And but there's also the story that we stuck with it for 10 years. Like, despite being sued by CBS and Paramount, having to move across the country, COVID, former director who filed a fraudulent copyright. I mean, all this nonsense. Violence. Yeah. I mean, getting assaulted, having to deal with, go to the courts to deal with that because, some numbnut thought it was cool to fly across the country to assault me. All this stuff. And you know what? It doesn't matter, because we're going to finish it and we're going to release it, and it's going to be great. And CBS can either make a big deal about it and give us more press, or they can just let it be out there and just move on with getting your company sold. And I got inside news that Warner Brothers is out.
Oh, they're out.
Yes, I can't say who, but I have someone who knows someone deep inside Warner Brothers who said, nope, that's not happening. Which means Byron Allen right now is the only official bid. We haven't heard if Skydance is going to put in a bid for. Of course, if you haven't been following, Paramount Global, the parent company of Paramount Studios and CBS Studios, is up for sale because Sherry Redstone wants out. Byron Allen, the comedian, famous, who's, I guess, is he the owner or one of the founders of BET? I forget which. He's put in a bid. He really wants all the TV stuff and to sell the studio off. So, but anyway, we're hoping that Paramount's going to go through some changes, and we'll see what happens. There may be, a bloodletting at Paramount. It was not bloodless.
It was not bloodless.
As Moreau says. So it was good. The thing that we need to mention again, and you mentioned it earlier, and I think it's so significant, is that we had the same crew for 4 shoots.
Virtually. I mean, more or less.
More or less. I mean, the top end.
We had a camera guy come back from January.
Derek came back, yeah.
Derek
basically, both directors, DP, gaffer, producer. I mean, the 5, top people there, And then our sound department was the same the whole time.
Were they there in 21?
Yes. Yeah. Barry did the sound back then as well.
Great.
You know? So there's a lot of consistency. And, I know that the haters love to say, oh, whoever worked for Alec, didn't come back. Pretty much everyone has stayed around who's been there since the 2021 shoot. Because
what's interesting is I went back and looked at, I forget why. I was looking for Travis footage for some inserts. And I went back to 2019 and I was looking at the crew there. I'm like, I don't know anybody there. Every crew member, I'm like, I don't know the name. I might have seen them because I showed up for a day there. I'm like, who are these people? But from the time Ted and I kind of took over the reins, they're the same folks.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Now, and we had, listen, at the 2019 shoot, we had a great line producer in Chris, who was really sharp. He's been in the industry forever. And we had a very good DP in Jim Ross. Those two guys were good. But what we had to do was, after that fiasco with that director, what we had to do was reformulate the way we did crew for Axanar. There's the way you can do it in Hollywood is, you hire the top people, the above the line people, your DP, your producer, your director, and then your line producer fills in all the other positions. Your obviously who your editors, but the crew, the shoot crew, is usually chosen by the line producer.
For sure, they're guys and gals.
Yeah, and they're just like, we're going to find who's available. Yeah, and if it's people they work with, great. But the DP and the director, in general, they may have some influence. They may say, hey, hire this guy. I've worked with this camera op. I love this guy. But often not. If you're Steven Spielberg, you got your crew. He's probably a couple dozen deep on his crew, the same crew every single time. But most productions just go out and hire whoever they can get at the time. We were lucky. And once we decided to split up the directing chores between you and Ted, and once we got Jeff in, not that there's anything wrong with Jim Ross, the DP from 2019, he was excellent. He wasn't available. Yeah. And Jeff stepped up and did an amazing job. But having the same crew every single time has enormous benefits for consistency, for time saving, for knowing, developing that language. And then lessons that you learn, you carry over. I always say we've made over 10 years, I've made a lot of mistakes. They're not the ones the haters think. They have no clue what the mistakes are because they weren't part of the production. But I'll tell you, lots of things that I wouldn't do it again or have learned or whatever. And one of them is this whole, I'm not sure I would split the director's job up again, but for Axanar, it served us very, very well because I wanted to get Ted in there, but Ted and I don't have the relationship you and I have, and Ted wasn't involved in Prelude, so there was a lot of the camera work that I just didn't feel. It's not that I didn't feel comfortable Ted could do it; he could. It was just I wasn't guaranteed that I was going to get what I needed.
Well, and the other thing with Ted is, and we've talked about this, Ted and I we've directed without, and by the way, you put two directors on a production, it's bad news. The actor who plays Alexander, when I walked up to her and I said, hi, I'm your other director, her face was like, oh no. Oh no, there's two directors. With Ted and I, we get along great because we both respect each other and we know our lanes. And unlike Ted, I get stuck with everything. Ted goes home. I get stuck with everything. And I'm the one that Alec goes, why does that suck? Why can't you fix that? Oh, well, Ted did it to me. I don't really get to say that. I let it happen on my watch. So The other side of it is I kind of have to own whatever problems are there and figure out how to fix it in post. So Ted doesn't have that. So Ted can completely dedicate himself to performances. The other side of it is that we don't have a big crew. And you and I were just talking about, gosh, if we could have had some more crew, it would have made things easier.
Yeah.
As a result, I'm doing many jobs. I'm doing assistant director jobs. I'm doing script supervision with Ted. We're both trying to manage that. I'm helping Jeff with DP duties. I'm helping Jim with lighting duties. I'm doing all these other things that if I had to then work with the actors, honestly, I think in this case would feel ignored because they're like, where's my director? Why is he running around doing all this other stuff? Yeah. Whereas now what's happened is with Ted, they feel very well taken care of. They get their best performances and I'm running around doing all my other stuff. And then, Ted and I interface very well. It's just for this production, I'm biased toward the technical side because it all ends up in my lap in post anyway. And right. Ted is biased toward the let's get the best performances possible. Yeah. And in some amazing, and also not just say some, in many amazing cases, he's able to pull some performances from the actors that are so ancillary to the production because Ted hasn't been with it for 10 years. Ted will come up with an idea for a performance that I would have never dreamed of because I'm like in this Star Trek mode. And we're like, oh man, that totally plays. Let's go that way. And with Moreau in particular, where every take he gave us was another completely different winner, Ted was able to go, well, what about this? Let's go down that path. And we get these performances that just ring out in a way that would have never happened if it had been just me.
Yeah, no, it worked really well. And that's why I think I've learned a lot about people and roles and jobs. And listen, I think we would probably, whereas we had, and I think even didn't we on the second shoot, which was January of last year, right? That shoot, which was that 3 days?
That was the big shoot because we had Friday on the bridge with what's his name
the stuff that you did,
and everything else,
yeah. So, but we had ACs for that.
Well, we had ACs for him because he, in a Steadicam rig. What are you going to do if you need something?
Didn't we have ACs on the documentary portion as well?
I think we had swing people who were helping Jim with lighting and we call that they're doing multiple jobs.
I know we had ACs in 2019 and we still had shit that was out of focus.
That's unconscionable.
Yeah, it was crazy. But anyway, so lots of lessons learned. And I still, the thing I think, it's going to be real interesting because I was thinking, I know Josh Irwin is coming next month to shoot on at our studio. And I was thinking, he's doing an Axanar fan film as well. Yes. Yeah, he is. He's doing an Axanar fan film. He's doing an Avalon universe film set in the Axanar universe, basically set in the Axanar era of the Avalon universe. But anyway, he runs a very lean ship. It's like him and he's directing and DPing and, so it's going to be very different. So that's going to listen. I'll adjust whatever.
Sure. Just one of the big differences between a lot of fan films and what we've done with Axanar, and I've kind of wet noodled Jeff in the face about it, and that is that we have to have what's called a very narrow depth of field. So that means, what that's silly camera talk for, very little of the shot is in focus. And you're like, well, why is that a good idea? That sounds terrible. Why would anybody do that? Well, what you put into focus is somebody's eyeball. And that's the life of an actor, of a human being, obviously. And when you have that in focus and maybe an inch either way, not the tip of the nose, the eyeball, that means that camera operator because actors don't talk like this, like robots. They're moving. In fact, there's a beautiful moment where Moreau says a pretty big line and he leans forward like this. And, you had to roll I didn't know he was going to do that. Oh, that's very, very difficult to do with your operating and pulling focus.
Oh, yeah.
You have focus pullers and all that stuff. But because, not just because of how Prelude is shot, but because I think it looks amazing to have a very narrow depth of field. That requires a lot of crew. And if you expand the depth of field to be kind of ahead, then you can work a lot faster because you kind of set the camera and it's kind of, you're going to be good if the actor moves a bit, wherever they're going to go, it's going to look fine. They're going to kind of stay in that field. So, but because we were shooting at 6K on red, they were almost all red cameras. Like 2021, we shot with Blackmagic cameras, which is fine. But the new reds that we're shooting with, the Komodos, are just, it's ridiculous, the resolution that they get. Like in editing, there's shots where we shot, I don't know, we call it a cowboy. So we get their head down to kind of their waist-ish, middle thigh, if they're sitting. It's a larger frame. Well, how do you get a close-up? Well, normally you have another camera there. Well, we only really had 2 red cameras running. So how do you, and one's at different angles. But if I wanted to do a close-up on that same frontal angle, we'd have to shoot it again, which we didn't have that kind of time. There's no way. But because we shot in 6K, I can pop in actually 3X and get this kind of framing. Plus we're in CinemaScope, which means it's very horizontal. Like right now, if you look at this frame, if you're watching this, we're in kind of 16 by 9. This is what you're doing. Our framing is like this. It's here. So when you pop in on somebody, you're really in there. You're in their life. You're in their essence. And because we're shooting on this, in addition to this narrow depth of field that we're trying to create, it makes cinematography a nightmare. But the results they're just spectacular. Yeah.
No, it's going to be great. Axanar will, once again, will really, I hopefully raise the bar. It's going to be real interesting to see how our compositing team does. It's going to be real interesting to see how we have 2 new VFX houses work, groups working on it. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
We've also got new composers.
Yeah. So there's a lot, but it remains a passion project. It remains a labor of love for everyone. And so we're thankful to everyone who took part. And listen, we are wrapped. We do not have to shoot again. We were hoping that the shoot last October was going to be the final shoot, and then Sonia Alexander had to reschedule. So,
and thank goodness, because we got her later, and we got a Moreau that we like even better.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting as we've talked about. It's going to be interesting who the big breakout characters are for the next 2 episodes. And
what's the T-shirt going to be? Is it going to be Drip Drop again? No, it won't be that. What's it going to be?
Yeah, exactly. And who does everyone take to? I think it'll be really interesting to see how people react to our Andorians, because we have one spectacular actor. Spectacular actor playing Admiral Threll.
I want to have a whole show just with him.
Yeah, he was amazing. There were 3. He does no, but the 3. I know we're talking nonsense to people if you're listening on a podcast app. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you're going, "What are you talking about?" But there's this great line, and the actor we had Steve Minaj, who is, I don't mind saying his name.
Oh, now you're going to say his name too.
Yeah, because he is Steve Einat's nephew. He is the nephew of the original actor who played Garth of Isar, and he blew everyone away back in September.
And let me just say this. Let me just tell the story. Since you said his name, at the time that day we had both Andorians, which is a makeup menagerie. Yeah, we had Tanaka on we had Tanaka on the bridge, and we had to move lights and put on the green screen. And I think did we have Kevin that day too? Or was Kevin with Gary? Kevin was with Gary on the next day. So we had this massive makeup thing, and our first Andorian took forever. It took us forever, and we were 2 hours down. Now on this shoot, since I've been directing with Ted, we have never gone over any day we have hit every shoot 12 hours or less, which is our normal day. And I'm looking at Jeff and I'm like, there is no way we are getting Kevin or Steve in 45 minutes. That's what we had left on our day. And he goes, well, we're just going to tell the crew, this is our only time we're going to go over. Sorry, we'll get some pizza and move on. We sit down and I go to Ted. I go, how's this going to go? He goes, I think it'll be all right. Right before Ted yells action, Kevin says, well,
Steve.
Sorry, I keep saying Kevin. Steve says, well, I've got all the lines memorized. All the lines? Yeah. Let me just do them all at once. All in a sequence, all at once. And he goes, well, okay. How bad could this be? He goes through all the lines, and every read is like, well, that's a cut print. That's a cut print. That's a print. That's a print. And I look at Ted, and Ted looks back at me like, let's just do another one. Just do another one. We roll 3 of those. And it took, 10 minutes. And I cut. And I'm like, I kind of have everything I need. I'm done. And Ted goes, well, let's roll a few. And I told the camera crew, because we only had 2 reds that we were running. I'm like, look, I've got all the head pictures I need. Let's get hands. Let's get the fruit salad he's got on his uniform as an admiral and all that other stuff. Let's get all kinds of bits and the antenna. Let's get all that while we're at it, and we'll get the lines. So then Ted ran him through the normal thing for 20 minutes. We got all this incredible footage, which refers to this one shot that Alec was saying, 3 and this big blue hands. We were done. We wrapped on time, 10 minutes early, because Steve killed it. Like, you can't believe. Like, there's very few bad, like our Moreau, very few bad takes. I want to have a show with our Moreau and Steve. I want to have them in a show. Amazing.
Yeah, it is crazy. It is great. So, well, listen.
I've been waiting to tell that story because I can't really talk about it, but now that you said his name, I can say it.
Oh yeah, I don't mind talking about Steve. He was awesome. Listen, I want to thank everyone who has been following this process for the past 10 years. Thank you. It's literally next month. Next month is the month we did the Kickstarter.
Is that right? March?
It was March of 2014. We did the Kickstarter.
March
1st we started. So it was this Friday. It'll be 10 year. Thank you. Listen, thank you for being part of the process. It is so exciting to be, I'm not going to say we're on the 1 yard line. We're not even on the 20 yard line, but we're over, we have crested the hill. I mean, we are on the downside slope of Mount Everest, if you will. And which is maybe that's a bad analogy because going down Mount Everest is as dangerous.
Well, I will say that if we're going to use a touchdown analogy, I think 2-3 years ago, we didn't know that what we're going to deliver now is so much more. So I'm involved in an Axanar fan film. Josh is involved in an Axanar fan film. What's going to come in the next 6 months? I mean, it's not like, I'm like Josh and I are just off on our own doing it. We're all helping each other get this done. And it's all going to break on the beach and in the end zone with not 7 points, but 20 points. And so we're pushing forward an offensive, if you will, toward the goal that's much, much bigger in scope than anything that we were going to think about 2 years ago. So it's incredible. I'm very excited. The woman that I'm dating, she's like, you're so happy these days. I'm like, because every day I wake up and work a little bit on Axanar. So I'm in finance now. So it's like, well, I like it. It's fun. But every morning I'm like, my computer's on and I do a little bit more and then go back to work, do a little bit more. It's great. Good.
Well, listen, thanks for coming out tonight, Mark. Mark, on the eve of your registered agent, or not registered agent, what's it called?
Enrolled agent.
Enrolled agent. Yeah, you're taking your enrolled agent test so you can represent people at the IRS. Yeah. And we will be back. Make sure you follow us. Follow our blog on Axanar.com. Follow the YouTube channel, the Axanar YouTube channel. These podcasts are released both through wherever you get your normal podcasts as well as on YouTube, which is more and more place people love listening to podcast. And this video, we do it with video as well as with just a traditional audio podcast. So thanks so much for all your time, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us through all these years. Thank you for your donations, those of you who donated. And hopefully also check out Axanar Confidential 126, which we are recording with Dave Lanyon, who is our super donor, who's basically getting us across the finish line so we don't have to raise any more money from donors. And there you go. Thank you so much. Stay Starfleet strong. And as always, my friends, live long and prosper.